Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Happy 2022, happy new year. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas, and I hope that you're having a great year so far. It is January 1st, which means it's my 30th birthday today. So today I'm making a little New Year's themed, it's kind of New Year's Eve themed tumbler using a pattern vinyl sheet and some glitter. Of course, New Year's has already kind of passed, so you can use this technique for any holiday, any pattern, any theme you want. You don't have to make it New Year's. I made this as a little birthday tumbler for myself, so I'm currently using it. But yeah, you don't have to make this New Year's Eve themed, obviously. Anyway, that's what we're doing today. I hope that you enjoy the video. If you do, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any of my new videos. I upload every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I also want to give just a quick little shameless plug here. My Patreon group, made by MANIANDMAL Elite, is open. We have spots for members. So the first of the month, early in the month, is great to sign up because you get the most for your money. You can sign up at patreon.com/MBMM Elite. It's also linked down below in the description box. I will also have down in the description box links and discount codes to almost everything I'm using in this video, as well as links to our social media, Facebook group, all of that great stuff. So be sure to check that out. Okay, I think that's it. I hope you enjoy. Let's go. I'm going to start off by going over what we're going to use in this video. So I'm going to use this New Year's Eve themed pattern vinyl sheet, a 20-ounce skinny straight tumbler from Craft Haven, and then I'm using 5 different glitters. I initially was going to use 4. So the first one is Bradshaw, and then Juliet. Bradshaw's from Peachy Olive Glitters, Juliet is PDB, Brilliant is also from PDB, and then we're using Metro City, I don't know how to say it, from Peachy Olive Glitters, and then we're going to add in another color later. Then we're going to need some painter's tape, a marker or a pen, whatever you want to use to draw out your lines, and then a craft knife. So to get started, we're going to first wrap our cup in this vinyl. I'm going to do a full wrap on it. Looking back with the way I set up my wavy lines, I probably could have gotten away with a half wrap vertically, but whatever you're comfortable with, it just depends how big you want your wavy lines to be. I did the full wrap because I didn't really know how I was going to map them out or how big they were going to be, how much space they were going to take up, so just consider that in your design. What I'm doing here is marking off where the excess vinyl is so I can trim that off. We don't have too much excess. I'm not sure what I would be able to use this for, but I'm going to cut it off just in case. You never know. So now I've got my perfect sheet of vinyl here, and I'm going to just wrap it around the cup. I'm not really too concerned with getting our seams lined up. This isn't a seamless pattern anyway, and we're going to cover up the seam with our wave design, so just get this on the cup. The seam does not matter in this case. What I'm going to do is take a piece of painter's tape and attach one end of this piece of vinyl. Because I don't need this to be super straight or perfect, I'm not going to take too much time trying to make this line up perfectly. I'm just going to tape off one side of my cup, test it, make sure that it wraps around and doesn't have any bunching or crinkling or anything. And then I'm going to pull back a little piece of the backing, cut off that excess, and then adhere that piece to the cup, how I normally do. This is just the less precise way of doing it. So once I've got it adhered to the cup, I'm going to wrap it around, just make sure that we are good to go, that it's not going to crease or anything weird. And then I'm going to apply it the same way I always do. I'm going to push back the backing as I smooth the vinyl onto the cup. So now you can use your thumbs here like I am, or you can use your vinyl scraper. I found that that was a little bit more helpful with this sheet of vinyl in particular. Just make sure that you're not scraping the vinyl onto the cup and you're just kind of using the scraper to push the vinyl onto the cup. Whichever technique is easier for you is perfect. I'm going to cut off the excess from the seam. Again, this does not have to be perfectly straight. The pattern doesn't have to meet up. Just get that excess out of the way. Then to finish up the top rim, I'm going to do what I always do, pull up the excess up over that top rim, and then take my craft knife at a 90-degree angle right with the top rim of the cup and cut off all of that excess, and then smooth everything down one more time. And then take my craft knife again, hold it at a 45-degree angle so that I can get all of this just tiny little excess vinyl away from that top rim. This is also going to expose that little bit of stainless steel to help form our seal with our epoxy later. So take this really, really slow. I didn't speed this footage up so you guys can see just how slow I take this, and just make sure you're really, really controlled. You don't want any skipping or anything with your knife and your vinyl. And then this is something new that I've been doing. I'm taking my heat gun and I'm heating up that top rim just a little bit with that vinyl, and then I'm going to smooth it down onto the cup. You can use your hands or your scraper. Just be careful because it will get kind of hot. And this helps just keep that vinyl sealed to the cup. You're not going to have any lifting or anything up at that top rim. So once that top rim is sealed, I'm going to do the exact same thing on that bottom rim. I'm going to heat up this vinyl with my heat gun, and this is going to help it be a little bit more stretchy than it already is and really form that seal at that bottom rim. We really don't want any lifting down here after we trim off all of this excess, because if you have that lifting and then you put on epoxy after, you will have these really sharp bits on the bottom. It won't be even. Your cup will be wobbly when you try to stand it up. So really, really take the time to make sure that this is adhered properly. You don't have any lifting, no bumps or anything like that. You really want this to be flat, but having that edge go over, that bottom rim gives you that nice finished look. So it's worth the extra time in the end. Once I trimmed off the excess from the middle, I heated up with my heat gun again and then just smoothed it out with my scraper. So now we've got our vinyl wrapped cup. And I'm going to go right into taping off for my wavy lines. I'm not going to epoxy in between here. There's really no need to. One of my things in 2022 is working smarter, not harder. So I'm not doing any unnecessary coats of epoxy here. So with the tape, I'm going to just place it down at like a diagonal angle. And this is where you'll decide if you want a lot of thin stripes or if you want just a few thicker stripes. You'll decide how big you want this, how much room you want it to take up, all of that. So initially I wasn't going to have the waves take up as much space as they did, but in the taping and when I mapped everything out, it kind of just ended up that way. So just make sure that it's the way you want it, map out, how big you want your waves to be and all of that. So the way I taped off was, you can see I taped off about half the cup with my tape. And then now I'm finding the seam, making sure that it's covered by the tape, because, why would we do these glittery wavy lines if we're not going to cover up that seam? So I'm taking a black paint pen here and just tracing over where the seam is so that I can make sure when I map out my wavy lines with this white paint pen that I'm covering that entire seam so you don't see any of it in the end. So right here, I started to kind of sketch out my line and then realized that I had placed the tape wrong. So I went and I put another piece of tape to make sure that my wavy line covers that very bottom piece of the seam. So I'm going to start over again. And now I'm starting from the bottom going up just to make sure that I cover that up. And if you saw my last video with the wavy lines going around the cup, I mapped everything out this kind of same way. But then when I went to cut everything out with my craft knife, I kind of went off course and I just cut where I thought. This time I really wanted to be intentional with how I was sketching these out, make them look the way I wanted them to as I sketched them, and then pretty much follow my pattern when I cut them out instead of going rogue on my own. So once I had that first line drawn on one side, I went over to the other side on the very other end of the tape and drew out that line. So now I have my edges sketched out and I can kind of space out the waves and decide exactly how big they're going to be. So one way you can do this if you wanted to make sure that they stayed within a certain size, or like if they took up just half the cup, you could always measure around. You can cut a piece of vinyl to put around and use that as your stencil. There are different ways of doing this. I just kind of went freehand and just kind of went where I felt it would be good. But there are more precise ways of doing this if you want it to be exactly half or measured out, or all of your stripes to be the exact same size, whatever you think will look best. So I drew the outer line of my far wave and then I went back over to the other side. So I'm kind of numbering these as I go. And like I said in the beginning, I was planning on having just 4 waves, but then as I was drawing them out, I decided it would be better to have an odd number and have 5, and just with the spacing and everything, it ended up working out better to have 5. So I'm drawing these, and you can see that I go over them a couple times. Sometimes I change course a little bit just to make it look as smooth as possible. I don't want any straight lines. I don't want corners. I want this to be as wavy and fluid as possible to make it look really just organic and flowy. So I'm changing my lines a little bit, going around, connecting things in different places, and that's totally fine. Go over this as many times as you feel necessary until you're happy with what your waves look like. Once I had my tape all placed down, I was ready to get into my cutting. And just to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to trim off all of the excess tape from this top rim. I'm going to leave it at the bottom. I'm just going to fold over the edges to make it easier to peel up later. I just didn't want that top rim to be getting in the way. So now we're ready to cut out the middle portions of our wavy lines so that we can glitter them. So I'm going to do basically 2 rounds of glittering. I'm going to do what I have numbered as wave number 4, wave number 5, which is the middle, and then wave number 1, and then we'll go back and do number 2 and 3 afterwards. So I'm going to take my craft knife and just very, very carefully and slowly cut along those white lines that I sketched out so that we can expose the middle part of the wavy line and then have our stencil around it. Once you're done cutting, you'll remove that middle portion of the wave so that it's exposed. Obviously, we can paint it and glitter it. And if at this point you don't like the shape of your wave, don't be afraid to go in there and cut a little extra off. If you want to reshape anything, you can absolutely do that at that time. Just make sure that your waves are shaped how you want them to be. And also just make sure that you are being really careful as you pull up all of this tape. You don't want to pull up any of your vinyl as you remove the tape. So just be careful, take your time. Better safe than sorry always. I decided just to tape off the rest of this half of the cup so that I only had my waves exposed just to make it a little bit easier on my eyes. You guys know I don't like to confuse myself. So here are the 5 glitters I'm going to be using for our wavy lines. I laid them out in the order that I want them to be on the cup. And the ones we're going to do first are Bradshaw and Metrocity. I don't know the name of the color. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, those are from Peachy Olive Glitters, and then I'm also using Juliet from PDB. So as our base coats for each of these colors, I'm just going to use some acrylic paint. You can use spray paint, chalk paint, whatever you have that you want to use as a base is totally fine. And please ignore how much paint I'm putting in this little palette. I have a really bad habit of using or putting out way more paint than I'm actually going to use, so just ignore that. You do not need a lot of paint. For this acrylic base, I had to do 2 coats of each color to get enough of a good base or good coverage. If you're using spray paint, it probably would be good with just 1 coat. Whatever paint you're using, just make sure you have good enough coverage that those colors from underneath aren't going to show through your glitter. So I'm just taking a little paintbrush here and painting each color where it's going to go, and I'm letting it dry about 30 minutes in between each coat, and I'm using the second paint coat as my adhesive for the glitter. So we're going to let this dry 30 minutes and then go in now with our second coat. I'm going to start with my pink, and you can see the coverage is not perfect. You can see a little bit of the vinyl still poking through, but the glitter you use matters. So I'm using really high quality full coverage glitter. So those 2 coats were totally fine. You can't see anything through the glitter. So make sure that you're using good glitter. It really does make a difference. So I applied Bradshaw to that pink spot, and now I'm going to go in and brush off any excess. Just make sure that there isn't any stray glitter on those next 2 waves that I'm going to fill in. And then I'm going to go in and do the middle color, which is Metrocity. I think that's how you say it. I've decided. And I'm going to apply my paint. So just make sure that when you're applying your paint, if you're using it as an adhesive like I am, you don't want to put on so much that it's like gloopy or globby, but you do want to make sure that you have enough that the glitter is going to stick to it. So try to find that little happy medium. Once I've got that on there, I'm going to go in with my last color, this natural beige. This Ceramicoat paint brand, by the way, is way better. It gives really, really good coverage. You can see how solid the coverage is even with just 1 coat of paint. I got that at Hobby Lobby, and they have tons of colors. Highly recommend them. Before I went in with the gold paint, you can see that I tapped off the excess with some scissors, and now I'm going to go in and do this gold. So the other two colors are much darker. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't contaminate my gold glitter in any way. And now I'm going to go in with Juliet, which is a beautiful color. I think it's pretty underrated. It's a really nice, just pretty champagne gold. So once I had all of my colors on there, I'm going to tap off all of the excess again and then let it dry about, I think I waited about an hour to maybe 2 hours. And now I'm going to seal my glitter with my tried and true, my Crystalac glitter glue. And I'm just going to squirt it straight out of the bottle. I'm not going to dilute it with water or anything. I'm just going to put a pretty generous amount onto each wave and then brush it on to seal that glitter in. Make sure that you are cleaning your brush in between application because you will get a little bit of glitter just like that coming off, and you don't want to contaminate your other colors. So just make sure that you are washing your brush in between each little wave sealing. So once I had my glitter glue on each of these colors, I'm going to remove all of the tape from my cup. I put on some gloves, use my tweezers, just really take your time with this. You don't want to mess anything up, so be really careful, go slowly, and just get rid of all of that tape on your cup. Once you've got all of that pulled up, you can set your cup aside and let this dry at least 2 hours. And once it's dry, we will go in and glitter our other two waves. So once this was dry, I looked at my waves and the gold and the teal looked pretty solid. The coverage was pretty good. But on the pink, when I sealed, you can see that some of that glitter shifted just a little bit. So I did end up adding a second coat of glitter to that wave at the very end. But right now I'm going to go in and do my other two barren waves. I don't have any gray acrylic paint, so I just mixed my own. I did half black, half white, mixed them together. Again, I put way too much paint in my palette, so just ignore that. For this white acrylic paint, the coverage was absolutely terrible, so I had to do 4 coats of this, which was not fantastic, but whatever. Anyway, when you're painting these two middle waves, just make sure that you are really careful. Take your time, be as slow as possible doing this. You don't want to get any acrylic paint on those glitter waves, obviously, so just take your time. After I put my first coat down of my white paint, I went right into the gray, and because this is such a dark gray, it's going to only need 1 coat to go in with our silver glitter. So I'm making sure that this coat is as perfect as I can get it, that it's even, that I have enough paint, because right after this, I'm going to go right in with Brilliant, which is my silver glitter color. Once I had the glitter applied, I went in with a chip brush and just brushed off any of the excess from the other colors that was around. The glitter's sealed, so it's not going to move that glitter that's underneath. It's just going to take off the silver speckles that we don't want in the other colored areas. So now I'm going to go in and fix that pink section. I'm taking some of the glitter glue and just put a little bit of it into my paint palette. And now I'm going to very carefully brush right over that same glitter that I have laid down. And I'm going to do the entire wave. The entire wave doesn't need a second coat, but I want the coverage to be even. So I'm just going to cover the entire thing versus just like patching it up, if that makes sense. So now I'm very, very carefully going in and covering that up. I don't want to get any pink glitter or avoid getting as much pink glitter as I can into that silver section because our silver acrylic paint is still kind of wet, and I'm not going to be able to take that chip brush and really like brush off that excess at this point. So just be careful as you do this. If you want to wait and seal your silver glitter before you go in and add the second coat if necessary, go for it. You can definitely do that. I just went right in. So then I went right back to my white stripe, added the rest of my coats. I waited about 20 minutes in between each of these coats here. And once I got to a point where I liked the coverage, I went in with my 4th coat of white paint, and this is the one I'm going to use as my adhesive. So I'm using a little bit more than I normally would just to make sure that the glitter is going to stick to it, but again, being very, very careful. The white glitter I'm using here is Mystic from PDB. This is a new color, and this was in the ALE Christmas mystery box that just came out in December. It's a really pretty, almost iridescent white color. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a mix that she did with Brittany Barnes. So once that was dry, I waited about an hour and a half. I'm going to go in and seal those two colors, both the white and the silver, using the exact same method with the glitter glue, just going in and applying a pretty generous amount. When you're sealing, the goal is to not like drag the glitter around. You just want to kind of glaze that glitter glue over the glitter, if that makes sense. Kind of how you would with epoxy. You don't want to drag so hard over the glitter that you move it. You just want to kind of glaze over it a little bit. I did touch up a few spots in my teal section as well, so I went ahead and sealed that one more time. And then I also sealed the pink section. Juliet, the gold, was perfect, so I didn't have to do anything to that. I let that dry overnight, and then I went in with my first coat of epoxy, taking 30 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy, and I'm just applying an even coat all over the cup. You can see I'm not really being too careful with these individual glitter colors. They are sealed and not going anywhere, so I just applied this coat as normal. I let it dry about 8-ish hours, and then went in with a second coat. That one was about maybe 10 to 15 milliliters. It was pretty thin. So once that one was dry, I let that one dry overnight as well to make sure it was ready for sanding. So here's what the cup looks like now. I'm going to go in first with an 80 grit sanding block, really get that top rim really well. And here's where you can see at the top rim where we cut off that excess vinyl with our craft knife at that 45-degree angle. We got rid of that vinyl, so we don't really have to do too much sanding there, just a little bit. And now I'm going to sand down the glitter so that it matches. And then I went in with a 220 grit sanding block and just went over that same area again. And then did a little bit at the body of the cup and then fixed that bottom of the cup. So then I washed it with dish soap and water, and now we're ready to finish off the very bottom. I'm taking some electrical tape and I'm going to run my fingers along the adhesive part just to get rid of some of that stickiness. And then I'm going to very carefully place this around that middle stainless steel portion of the cup. And as you can see, I am taping pretty close to where our vinyl and our glitter lines end because I do want to show the flow from the body of the cup down with the vinyl that we wrapped around the bottom. So I just taped pretty strategically. And then I'm going to take that same ocean blue paint that we used for our teal stripe, and I'm going to use that to glitter the bottom. I did 2 coats of this paint, and I just hit it with my heat gun in between so it would dry faster. And then I'm going in with Metrosity from Peachy Olive Glitters, which is our middle stripe color. I decided I wanted to use that and kind of just make it flow like from the middle to the bottom of the cup. So once I had that glitter applied, I removed the tape, and then I went in again with that little paintbrush and fixed this little area here where it was disconnected. So I wanted to, like I said, make this middle stripe flow all the way into the bottom. So I made sure that it was all connected and was all glitter together. So you can see there that it just flows and looks like one continuous glitter stripe. I let that dry about 45 minutes, and then I hit it with a coat of matte clear from Rust-Oleum. I let that dry about an hour, and then I was ready to go in with my final coats of epoxy. I'm going to show you how I mix my epoxy. I get a ton of questions about it. I use these big mixing cups that I get from Platinum Craft Vinyl. I will have them linked down below in the description box with a discount code for you. And I mix up 160 milliliters at one time. I'm working on a lot of cups at one time usually, so I just mix up a big batch and it makes it a whole lot easier. I'm using a little extra ink epoxy, of course, it's my favorite. And how flippin' cute are these red and green bottles? These came in the Christmas mystery box that just came out in December. So I always start with part B. It's the thinner part. I just like to put that in first. And this is a 1-to-1 ratio, so I'm doing 80 milliliters of part B, and then I'm going to go in with part A. I like to heat up my part A with my heat gun just like this, really, really quickly, not too much. I just want to kind of take the chill off to help it flow a little better. Part A is the thicker part, and it's usually a little bit harder to get out of the bottle, so heating it up just a little bit helps it just flow a little bit easier. So I do that too when I've got it, I'm trying to pour it out, just helps it move a little bit. And I'm going to do 80 milliliters of this as well. And then I'm going to take a popsicle stick and just kind of get those 2 parts to mix together a little bit, just to get them to blend a little bit. And then I'm going to throw it in my mixer from Hobby Lobby, and I just take this little rod, throw it in there, and then I put it in my mixer, and there we go. And I let a batch this big mix for about 11 to 12 minutes. Once it's done, I'm ready to put it on my cup. So I ended up using, of this big batch, maybe 20 milliliters on this cup, 15 to 20. Once this one was all cured, I waited about 8 hours. I went in with my final coat, and that final coat was about 15 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy as well. Once it was all cured, this cup is all finished. I really love this cup and I hope that you do as well. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button and make sure you are subscribed to my channel so you don't miss any new videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so excited for 2022 and I'm so excited to have you all along on this journey with me. So I will see you in my next video. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Happy New Year and I'll see you in my next one. Okay, love you. Bye. Okay. We're great. We're starting off so good. Everything's great. We're so good. Okay. First video back, I'm already out of breath.